Welcome in, Falcons fans. Your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for more Atlanta Falcons content. And it's been a while since I've made an individual Falcons video. I've been doing a lot of live streams as of recently, talking about the team with fellow Atlanta Falcons content creators. Definitely go check those out and subscribe to those guys. Great Atlanta Falcons content creators we have in the community. But I wanted to make this video today and kind of do my pixelation of the last 3 weeks of this Falcons season, where they are 1-2 right now, going into a big 3-game slate, going against all NFC South opponents, and give my thoughts on some topics going into that game and where I see this team is and where I think they could go from this point on. I appreciate you guys definitely watching this video and showing support. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more Atlanta Falcons content. Like the video as well, and leave your comments down below on any discussion points that you want to mention that I talk about in this video. So obviously the Falcons, like I said, came off Sunday Night Football, 1-1 in prime time so far this year, losing to the Kansas City Chiefs 22-17 in a game where people can question Morris's decision not to kick a field goal, the decision on 4th and 1, other things that come into play, always looking at all the things that you reflect on. Why didn't we win the game? What can we do to win the game, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to kind of break down some particular topics moving forward about this team. And we're going to start with the offensive side of the ball. We're going to start with Kirk Cousins first. So Kirk Cousins, one of the biggest concerns coming into the season was his Achilles. How far in recovery was he? Was he really healthy? Is he mobile? What is he? Week 1, we know that didn't look great. Week 2 looked better, led a comeback drive. Week 3 had his moments, but he had his struggles. And you can still see some limitations with Kirk. Obviously, I say one of the biggest things you see with Kirk Cousins is when he's in the pocket, especially, in the shotgun. He is a guy who usually, especially if you're not a mobile quarterback, because that's not really Kirk's game. Being like a running quarterback isn't his game in general. But usually with guys who aren't runners, they usually are able to step around, move in the pocket, and, create lanes, passing lanes that they can see through, make a good throw, etc. One thing you notice with Kirk is when he sits in the pocket, he really doesn't move unless it's like, oh, a lineman is getting pushed into me, let me get out the way. Outside of that, he pretty much will stay in a spot. And that sometimes can be a disadvantage because now the defense knows we just got to get to that spot and we can create an overthrow, an underthrow. Maybe we can get a sack, create a fumble. He's fumbled the ball a couple of times this year. And I don't know if that should stop confidence in his sidestepping, because there's definitely some where you're like, if he just moved a couple of steps, may be able to get a better throw off than some of the throws he's able to get off. Obviously, one example was an interception he had in the Kansas City game. Didn't move, stayed in the spot, got hit, threw a pick, right? So people are assessing Kirk Cousins' game. I think Kirk has been fine, but he hasn't been great. And I think you need him to be good to great. Fine isn't going to be good enough as the season progresses. You need a little bit more from Kirk. And I think Kirk can get there. Because again, with his type of injury, he's able to play. He's able to take hits. So it's just a matter of how does he feel week to week? Does he get better week to week? Does he improve week to week? It seems like he's still developing chemistry with his weapons. And I think that's obviously a big part of the game as well. Because remember, this is a new cast of characters for him. So he's developing chemistry with some of these guys. I think he already has strong chemistry with Darnell Mooney as one of the guys who stands out to me so far. I think Kirk, like I said, he'll do some good things, but there are some times where it's like, okay, you can still see he's laboring a little bit. And what I mean by that is a lot of his throws. Now, some of you may have been who watch film and watch the Falcons, watch the All-22 film, may see this, where he seems to throw the ball low a lot. And I think that and especially when he goes outside the numbers. That may be because obviously he's talked about adjusting his stance, his footwork over the offseason, coming back from the injury, and that could be one of the reasons why he throws the ball lower sometimes than you think he should, or how it does go sometimes. For the main thing with me with Kirk is that, you have big body weapons with Drake London and Kyle Pitts. Definitely throw it a little bit higher, give them the ability to use their bodies to box out defenders, and make plays. Somebody made a reference to the Kyle Pitts penalty that was not called, that everybody believes should have been called offensive pass interference at the end of the game, before the last possession of the game for the Falcons. And some people, and I think Smitty mentioned this in our live stream yesterday, or whenever you watched this, will probably be 2 days ago. He mentioned if Kirk Cousins threw it a little bit higher, Pitts may have gotten that regardless. But that's a common theme for Kirk, is that he's been throwing the ball with lower trajectory sometimes. And I think that sometimes can create, obviously, an issue. It may be ideal in certain situations, because sometimes there's a throw you have to make and you're seeing the defenders around your guy and say, maybe best. Sometimes Kirk will just, when he gets the ball out of his hands, it just comes out low regardless. And so he has to get it up a little bit higher. He has to be more concise and sometimes believe what he's seeing, pull the trigger, which I think he's been doing and improving. I think with that, he's been improving, just being more concise. Week 1, he seemed like he was just locking on guys and kind of wasn't really trusting himself fully. Then I think he gained more confidence through weeks 2, and I think he gained more confidence through week 3. Now, going into your divisional games, you're going to need him to continue to grow his confidence and continue to improve his play, because that's going to be huge for this team moving forward if they're going to be able to pull off a 3-0 slate coming up potentially, which would be huge against the NFC South, which would put you at 4-2 and probably first in the NFC South. So for me, I think Kirk Cousins is kind of going through the process. I think he's getting better week by week, but he's going to have to continue to grow and get to that good to great status. If he can become resemble that guy in Minnesota under the Kevin O'Connell system, which we see is doing wonders for Sam Darnold right now, I think that will really take this offense to the next level, But it's not all on him. There's multiple things that have to happen. Obviously, 2 offensive linemen are missing right now. Ryan Newell, Storm Norton will be your replacement lineman. Hopefully no other injuries come to the offensive line. Caleb McGarry was ruled day-to-day. We'll see if he plays Sunday. Drew Dalman was put on IR. He'll be out for at least 4 games. So we'll see how that changes things. I think it won't impact the passing game as much as it will impact the running game, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see how it all turns out. But overall, I think Kirk Cousins, like I said, has been fine. He's done some really good things. It's just continuing to get more confidence in himself, getting more comfortable with the playbook, getting more comfortable with his players, his teammates. And I think the offense, especially that passing game, can really start to click. Now, this takes me into my next topic, which is the man who's been calling the plays on offense, Zac Robinson. He is a guy who has taken some heat at times this year, but he's also, again, had some brilliance at times this year. Week 2, obviously, I think people would say out of the 3 games was probably his best called game so far. Week 1, we kind of look at that and say that was a terribly called game. Week 3, there were some good things, but there were some things that some people questioned. And so when you get into Zac Robinson, first thing you got to always remember, this is the first time offensive coordinator. He's growing, he's learning his weapons, he's learning the best way to use these guys, and he's learning within his system what is the most effective way I could call plays for this offense so they can be at the top of their game. That is something that, takes some time. You always used to hear the adage that Bill Belichick would use the first 4 games of the regular season to be his preseason and figure some things out, figure some kinks out before really hitting their stride in New England when they're at their peak with Tom. And right now, I feel like the Falcons are going through a bit of that period with this offense. It's Zach, where because they didn't play a preseason, which I always have to make this point, even if the starters played the preseason, 90% of the plays they're calling, they wouldn't have called in the preseason. So they'd still be running these plays for the first time. So it's sometimes you just got to run a play a couple of times to really get it down. So outside of practice. So just something to keep in mind. But I think, the Kansas City game was a little. I feel like every game has been called differently. I would think some of you agree with it. If you think about each game, they've all been kind of called differently. First game was kind of the pistol shotgun game. Game 2, they did more under center play action. Week 3 was kind of a mixture of pistol, play action, shotgun. But they did a lot more outside, trying to get the ball to the playmakers outside, more screens. There's been 3 clearly different offensive game plans over these first 3 games, right? Again, still trying to figure out, okay, what is the best way for us to play against this particular defense? Do we need to go outside more? Do we need to use more pistol? Do we need to use more shotgun? Do we need to use more play action? Obviously, Kirk is known for more of his play action game and some rollouts. That's some stuff you did see in this Kansas City game that just passed and had some success. And so I think that is part of it, obviously. And obviously, again, if he feels like Kirk has any limitations, we don't know how that's impacted play calling as well. I think when it comes to the weapons that we have, the first 2 games, he gave it to Bijan a lot. Kansas City dominated the Falcons' offensive line, so they weren't able to run the football using their bread and butter zone run. I've seen some people say you got to be able to find different ways to get it in their hands. Is it more of a game where maybe if you're going to get some more physical defensive line, is that more of an Algier game? We'll have to see how he kind of figures that out, because there's going to be other great D lines they go against moving forward. I think for me, I think people look at the receivers, and I want to point this out. The Falcons, if you think about the Arthur Smith era of the Falcons, I know a lot of people don't want to think about that, but let's take a look back at that. The Falcons era with Arthur Smith, pretty much Drake London and Kyle Pitts were your only weapons. And that's why it was so frustrating that they weren't getting the ball more. Like, they're literally all we have. And yet we're trying to dial it up to all of our other guys who do not strike any type of fear in the defense, right? This year is a little different for this offense, and again, you're including a new offense coordinator. Darnell Mooney has emerged himself as a solid number 2 receiver who deserves touches, and Ray McCloud has really showed that he can play in the slot. And you could go into, okay, what should their usage be? Knowing that, right? But you have more people to get the ball to now. And so for the Falcons and Zac, he's figuring out the right distribution. You know, do I become a whoever's open offense? Do we create or design certain plays for each guy? Do I have a game where I'm like, go to London more? Do I have a game where I kind of go to Pitts more? That's part of his game planning every week. Okay, what is ideal here in this particular game? I think a lot of people looked at the Kyle Pitts in this Chiefs game as a big game because the Chiefs are starting his tight end, especially week 2 when Mike Gesicki got off. Only had 2 catches in the game. He had a big catch, obviously a big play catch in the game. But again, is it usage? Is Zac not planning to give Pitts the ball? What is it? When you think about it, you know, I think Kyle, he's a guy who I believe is still learning this offense. If you remember the Rams offense in LA, the tight end is not necessarily a huge part of the offense in terms of like we're game planning to get the ball to the tight end, which is why you probably have seen Kyle Pitts during these few games in the X, playing that X spot, where I think some people feel like you could really take advantage of his size and his speed playing from the tight end in line. But again, that's something Zac has to figure out within the scheme of the offense, within the scheme of the players. What is best? Him playing X, him playing tight end in line and getting catches off of that. So Zac has a lot of things he's been trying to figure out. Drake's got touchdowns the last couple of games. He's been getting the ball slowly more to Drake London. I think the chemistry between him and Kirk has improved. Obviously, that's what you about Darnell Mooney and Kirk, Ray McCloud. You know, they've even used Bijan in some routes as well in the passing game. So I think it feels like the offense is not. It feels like the offense is waiting for that one game to explode. Because the offense, you see flashes, you see good drives, you see some really solid plays from time to time, but you just haven't seen it put all together yet, which leads to a big offensive performance from this offense. And so Zac really has to try to, going into these 3 games, you know, you got 3 games of film on your offense. What are you going to do this week against New Orleans? How are you going to be different? How are you going to execute? Who are you going to put an emphasis on in this game? Is this a Bijan game? Is this a Pitts game? Is this a London game? Is this like whoever's open game? That's what you're going to have to figure out, and then you have to establish your identity from that. Obviously, the Falcons, I said at the end of the day, the bread and butter is running it. And I'm about to get into the usage of Bijan and Algier in a second, but I think overall, I think Zac could obviously be better. We could talk about the 4th down call. Remember, for people who don't know, Kirk Cousins checked to that run on 4th and 1 against Kansas City. Kirk Cousins, originally, it was supposed to be a sneak. If you watch the play, like I've mentioned, Kansas City was probably going to stop that too. They just were going to beat us there. But his thinking probably there was, okay, we can either go inside or outside, right? And so that sometimes takes decision Kirk, and we'll have to we have to live with that decision and we move forward. But I think Zac, there's definitely some things he could improve, but I think he's growing as an offensive coordinator. I think he's growing, he's learning. And that's really all you can ask for. Remember, a lot of people have to remember something, especially offensively. There is a lot of new on this offense. This isn't like really the only player who's playing a lot in the offensive skills in terms of receivers who are here where Drake Lenacop is. Ray's new. Darnell's new. Offensive coordinator is new. That's 3 new guys right there who you have to, and then your quarterback is new. So you're trying to get all of them on the same page and then get Pitts and London on the same page and figure out what does that look like? How does that work? How does that all come together, and what success does that or can that lead to, right? So I think obviously Zac, like I said, can be better, but I think he will be. And I think that will lead to an upward trend for the offense. And then I want to get into the running backs. Obviously, people have talked about the usage of Bijan and Tyler Algier. Because you have a situation where you have Bijan, who is considered a star player. Teams game plan for Bijan Robinson. People are sitting here like, okay, Bijan, he's the guy that you need to worry about, right? Can beat you out of the backfield in the receiving game. Can he beat you in the running game? Dangerous guy when he gets the ball in his hands. Tyler Algier is the power back, just mean, aggressive, runs aggressively, runs angry, downhill guy. And we've seen in these 2 games that when Algier's got carries, he's been very effective, right? And there have been moments where people have asked, well, why isn't Algier maybe getting a carry here instead of Bijan? And you have to think about it from this perspective. You have a situation where you have a star running back and then you have Algier, who's a good running back, who probably could be a starter on another team. Again, with Zac in that process, he has to figure out, okay, when do I use Algier? Because here's the thing. I've told people this. If they run Bijan on a 4th and 1 and they get stopped, people are going to ask the question, where's Tyler Algier? But if they run Tyler Algier on a 4th and 1 and get stopped, people are going to ask, why wouldn't you have your best player on the field? That's how people are going to take. That's legitimately how people are going to be because of how Bijan is viewed. And so again, that's a figuring out process that has to happen. When is the best time to use a certain guy? Because again, the guys who look at this team are going to say you're going to have your best player out there, and that's Bijan, not Tyler. But I understand people who think, well, it should be Tyler in certain situations, certain possessions. And so in that process, I think they've tried to give the ball to Bijan a lot. And could they use him a little bit better? Sure. And could they also use Tyler Algier more? Absolutely. But also one thing we have to take into account, again, with offenses in the NFL, this isn't college, where you may get 80, 90 snaps. So you could have 2 running backs with 20 carries and still have like 40 pass attempts. This is the NFL. You may only have 50 snaps. So you may have 25 to 30 pass attempts. So you got about 20 runs that you can give to 2 backs. And you got to decide, who do you want to get the ball more? Now, obviously, time of possession has been a big issue. And I think the Falcons offense, that's a big thing that they have to improve, is time of possession. I think that will be huge for this offense if they can improve that. And also stay on the field on 3rd down. Because they haven't been good at 3rd down conversions. And that's something as an offense they have to improve and get better at as well. But for me, in this, if they figure out how to best use the 2 backs, I think that will be big in terms of unlocking this offense. Because I think even with the running game having your best running game was against Philadelphia. You just, if you don't have the zone read, you got to have other things. Is that more of a, pound in the middle? Is that going outside? Everybody has their opinions about what they want to do. Obviously, again, with the 2 offensive linemen hurt, how does that change with how you prepare? How does that change how you go? How does that change how you call plays? We'll have to see. Like I said, I think the running game could take a bit of a hit with the two offensive linemen going down. So we'll have to see how that affects Tyler and Bijan, and so on and so forth. So I mean, there's a lot of things that this offense can do that we've seen flashes of, that we just need to see consistency out of, and that for them to take the next step, especially during these next three crucial games against the Saints, Buccaneers, and Panthers, this Falcons offense has to kind of come together. Zac Robinson, Kirk Cousins, Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier, Darnell Mooney, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Ray-Ray McCloud, this offensive line all have to come together and play some of their best football coming out. Because the defense is doing good, has played well enough to keep you in these games, to keep you within scoring distance. Now the offense has to step up, because they need to step up if this team is going to take the next step that I think they can take, that I think a lot of people think this team can take. So this is going to be an extremely interesting 3 weeks for this offense. I'm very excited and very curious to see what's going to happen. So we're going to actually end the video right here. Just going to give my offensive thoughts. If I get some time later this week, I will definitely get out a defensive video on my thoughts on the defense so far. But if you guys really like this video, definitely like this video. Leave comments down below on any points that you would also want to bring up or discuss as well here for me. And we'll continue to grow from there. And like I said, we'll have to see what happens with this team moving on forward. It's your boy Bryce Lewis. See you next time.